I'm Bobby Mascara, and I am here with Jim Mason, John Carpenter, and David Boswell from Hyperledger. And we are here to hopefully give you information on the career scene for blockchain. So I'm going to get started. This is the antitrust policy because this is a Hyperledger Linux Foundation event. We have to behave ourselves when we're discussing things. And if you have need any more information, you can click the link there, which will be on the presentation that we will leave for you at the end to read more about it. And we are recording this call. So just take a moment to look over the antitrust policy. Okay, great. So tonight we're here in our second of a four-part series for careers in blockchain. And tonight is hosted by Jim Mason, and he's going to discuss with the people who have the jobs what they're looking for and how we can get ready to get those jobs. We're also tonight have Accenture, DTCC, and the Judge People Group who help with employment services. So we have a full agenda, so we're going to get started. Again, I'm Bobby Mascara, and I work for Ledger Academy, which writes curriculum for the Linux Foundation, among other clients. And I am working on the Giving Chain, which somebody just dropped in the chat about NFTs. And this project uses NFTs in a really unique way. And we'll talk about that for just a few minutes tonight. And I'm also on the technical steering committee at Hyperledger. And I'm going to let Jim introduce himself.
Hi, Jim Mason. I'm the public sector special interest group leader for Hyperledger. And so we have a lot of sessions around public sector topics for blockchain and so on. I'm also the Hyperledger Meetup leader for the Boston group as well. And I work in the blockchain space for now 4 years as a blockchain architect and product manager as well. So that's it for me. John, you want to go next?
You're on mute.
Yeah, this is John Carpenter. I run the Global Blockchain Summit. I'm also the co-chair of the Learning Materials Working Group with Bobby, and I run the Denver Meetup group as well, involved in a lot of different aspects of blockchain. Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to start off tonight with just some agenda items, and then we're going to move into a little bit about what the hiring process looks like. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jim, and he's got great panelists and great questions. So really quick, some announcements. We have the third series happening on November 17th. You can go to www.bcemployee.com for all the links to get in, all the information. Also on the website is the previous sessions we did in the summer recording and our first sessions recording as well. There's also a job page, lots of information on the website. And that's where you'll find out what's happening next for this BC Employee series. Also in Hyperledger, we have a new way of looking at ourselves. Let's say a new look for 2022. We're adapting that little card landscape look. So more information is at the touch of a button. You just click on any of the blocks that you see. They can either be the projects. We have our members each have blocks. So there's lots of information, the special interest groups. Everybody's in there represented. And again, if you just click on one of those, a card opens up with information about what's going on with that specific project or tool. So if you get a chance to check that out, that is very interesting as also. This week in meetups that's happening, there are 3. They are all on the Hyperledger wiki page under calendar. It is wiki.hyperledger.org. So if you want to attend any of these, you'll either get these live links from the presentation we'll post after, or you can just go to the calendar of meetings and grab the link and join them. So I'll leave them up there for a second to everybody see what they're about. Okay, more Hyperledger news. This morning in the technical steering committee meeting, we approved the blockchain automation framework. So that is now a project in incubation in the full arena. It will get its card under live projects. And it's very interesting. It is a way to spin up a prototype and a actual network without having to worry too much about some of the tech layers that usually bog people down. If you get a chance and you're trying to learn about blockchain, that's a great tool to start. So again, it's going to be moving out of the lab soon and into its own tab under projects. So take a look at that and see what you think. We'd love to hear your opinion on it, or love to have you join the coding process. And next, we're going to talk a little bit about the Giving Chain, which is my other project. This is a social impact project that we're working on with the Linux Foundation. We have 3 mentees this year, and the project winds up on November 17th at 10 a.m. We're doing our final presentation. We have worked very hard, just like the people did in 2019, if anyone's on the call from that time. This project has been going on for 2 years. What it is, it's trying to reallocate wealth in times of need. So if your community has a crisis and you have to get blankets to the high school, this platform is there at a touch of a button on your phone to organize the back end of that. And it creates a transparent, immutable record of that donation as well. Now, when we did it in 2019, it didn't really work because we couldn't really figure out how to digital twin the giving bags and the donations with what was going on in the blockchain. But as everybody knows, NFTs are really cool. And one of the things that the new project at Hyperledger called Firefly lets us do is in the back end, the donation will have just a picture, which will become an NFT, and transferring the NFT from the recipient to the transporter. I'm sorry, from the donor to the transporter to the recipient. It's an immutable record by transferring the NFT from wallet to wallet. You can see where the donation is. Then the NFT becomes a permanent record of the donation. It's really cool. It's it's cutting edge. So join us on the presentation on the 17th. If you want to learn more about it, the Giving Chain has a website, givingchain.org, and there is a live demo linked back to the Hyperledger wiki page. That was, well, it's not live anymore, it's recorded demo, but please watch it. It is very fascinating. If you ever want to help out in your community, you should know about this tool. It will help out a lot of people. And then also Ledger Academy has a learning hub in the metaverse. You can go to ledgeracademy.com if you're interested. And inside that building are all the information about Hyperledger, all the information about BC Employ. There's Ledger NFTs working out of there. There's consulting firm. It's full of information. It's like a library of blockchain. So current events are listed. It's fascinating. So please check it out if you have any questions. Those are our announcements for the evening. So I'm going to move on now to the second part of the program, which is just talking a little bit about what practices people need in their hiring processes to make good decisions. So first, what roles and positions are you looking for? You have this plan, but do you know what you're hiring? How many jobs, what those jobs look like? You have to figure all this stuff out in this big circle that if you're in this now, it's never going to end. You're going to constantly be hiring and reevaluating your employees. And, you know, this is a good skill to learn early. Also, what are the skills needed for these positions? These positions, some people have never even heard of, and they don't know if they are qualified for them. So you're going to have to figure out what people you already have, can they be moved, or how can I retrain the people I have, or hire new people and train them quickly. So that's something that you have to consider in your hiring plan too. Where are these qualified applicants? Am I looking in the right places? Because that's important. You don't want to hire from like a large group that you have to personally train when there's probably places that have them trained already. So a little research, you could probably find that out. And it's most important to know how much time do you have for this? Because this could take forever if you don't set a deadline, if you don't have clear cut timelines for things. And then most important, is my hiring plan inclusive? Are you letting everyone who's qualified for this position have a shot at it? So first, we can talk about the blockchain roles. This is on the BC website if you want further definition of this. I was just speaking at the NFT NYC convention in Manhattan on Tuesday, and I have to add like 15 new roles to this on the website because there were so many jobs I had never heard of that people were talking about that I just find now fascinating. So look for an update on the webpage to add some of those jobs as well. But the traditional jobs for blockchain that people are hiring for, first are the developers. Now there's two kinds of positions for each of these that I'm going to mention, and they are because the technology is so new, people are working on the blockchains themselves, but also are hiring for use case work. So once these blockchains are made and stabilized and governed properly, people are going to be using them. And so there's two types of developers, whether you're developing the blockchain or developing the use cases on the blockchain, they're both called developers. And then there's administrators. I'm not going to go over these. Again, these are on the website. We touched on these last week. Consultants and engineers. So any person who is a computer engineer can get up to speed in the training pretty easily. Again, but if you're not a computer engineer, you're not really going to want to learn that position. You're probably going to want to keep your skills because the consultants, it's a huge, huge arena now. I mean, community builders are enormous. It's just a matter of time before metaverse builders become a job. So there's a lot of consulting going on, a lot of talking, and that is the first step for any blockchain project is the consulting. Does my issue and my use case better off with a blockchain? That basically is the first question. So those are the roles. And then I said you have to have a timeline. So you also have to think of developing a hiring plan. So you first have your plan, and that's where you decide what your deadlines are, how many positions, where you're going to look, the whole bit. So you get that all on paper before you start. And then you figure out where you're going to find, and you start recruiting your applicants. Then you do your initial interviews, and then you have your your final decision making. But you might have multiple blockchain projects or multiple projects within projects that are going on. So you might need different blockchain projects hiring going on at the same time. So you also have to ask yourself, can some of these employees be used right now while the projects are building up? 20% here, 40% here, and then 10% doing their own job and wherever else you can fit them in. So that'll be an interesting thing to see how people will jump into positions that they have never had before while looking at new opportunities. So your timeline is important, especially your deadlines. So because it keeps your other steps in key. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay, so last slide for me. Management must portray the message of inclusivity. If you are not an inclusive group of people doing the hiring process, no one's gonna, the culture is important, and the culture is seen by the people who are interviewing and by the people who are doing the hiring process. That's the, that's the first step to the whole situation. So think about this. If you were to take everybody's name off the resumes and all of their demographics, would you look at the resumes the same? That's a good question to ask. Include people, again, if you're looking for a diverse talent pool, have people doing the interview and the recruitment process from a diverse background as well. It all speaks to that culture. Look at the language in your job descriptions. Are they offensive? Sometimes you don't realize how powerful or masculine some terms are, or offensive. So just try to keep aware of the language you use these days. And again, address bias in the interview process. Talk about it. Say, do you think our culture is okay? Do you, don't not mention it or bring it up because it is important. Market to a variety of social media platforms, not just the one you're used to or the one you use. It is a good idea to create your own professional organizations and see who shows up. It's like setting a mousetrap. This is really cool. Come see, and then people come see, and then you get to know them. And that's a great way to get people out to see what's going on. And again, seek out diverse candidates. Don't just go from the regular pool of people you have. And publish salaries. It is not fair to make a candidate guess at what they're worth. If you have a job and it has a salary, you should tell the people what that is. It's fair. It levels the playing field. So one more thing, education. Linux Foundation offers free education, or I'm sorry, complimentary education. If you do want to get certified, you would just have to pay to sit for the exam. And these are the courses. Again, they match up with a lot of the consulting courses, a lot of the administrator, developers. Again, we have different blockchains. They offer different solutions in different sectors. So you can take courses depending on where your particular pipeline or jobs need to be filled, what education programs you'll need for your group. And again, Hyperledger is not the only one. Consensus Academy offers great classes too, especially ones on BASU, so that's a good thing. And then if you're interested in getting a diverse candidate pool, offer the types of learning on your website and offer it to everyone. So Accenture does that. DTCC has a learning center to help you get up to speed again. And if you're interested as a candidate in these companies, go to their website and take some of their webinars and classes. So everyone has a learning portal. So jump on it. That's it for me. I'll be around after for questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Jim and his wonderful panel. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Bobby. That was a fantastic introduction. So what I'd like to do tonight, our focus is we have a panel discussion. Our topic is really taking a look at the employer's view from a hiring perspective and talking about, in a sense, at a high level, what are we looking for in a candidate? What would be the process and so on? So we've got a series of questions to go through with the panel. And I'm very fortunate tonight. Tonight, we have a great panel that's really a nice mix of different talents and skill sets. So I've got Richard Mazzaros from Accenture, Managing Director of Innovation, Technology, and Blockchain. I've got Jody Brockington from DCCC, who's focused as a Director of Diverse Talent Management there, and Drew Santos, Senior Account Executive from the Judge Group. So having just given you sort of a quick list of who's on our panel tonight, I'd like to give the panelists a chance to talk briefly, introduce themselves to the audience. So Richard, if you would mind taking a minute and just letting everybody know a little bit about yourself and the work you're doing with Accenture, that would be great.
Great. Well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Rich Mazzaros. I'm a managing director within our Accenture Technology and specifically within our Technology Innovation Group. I am the North America market lead for our blockchain and multi-party systems practice. So what that means is I do outreach to our clients to be able to discuss where blockchain can add value to their organizations, help to shape those types of opportunities with our clients and broader ecosystems. And then ultimately, I'm also responsible for the overall delivery of those projects as well. I've been working in the blockchain space for the past 6 years. I come at the blockchain space really from a mix of IoT, blockchain, as well as a heavy focus on commerce as well. And so really look at how all of those functions interact to be able to design and create completely new business models. And I am based in Dallas-Fort Worth, and great to be with you all tonight.
Great, thanks very much, Richard. Jody, can I ask you to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background? So you're on, Jody, I think you're on mute. If you can unmute yourself, that would be great. Okay, I'm having trouble connecting with Jody. Drew Santos, Senior Account Executive from the Judge Group. Drew, if you want to unmute yourself and give us a minute of your background, that would be great.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jim. So my name is Drew Santos. As Jim has said, I actually work as a Senior Account Executive, which is on the sales end for the Judge Group. I think we're probably one of the top 10, top 15 largest professional services firms, I think, right now in the market. I've been 10 years in this business, and I really think blockchain has been a focus, honestly, for the past 3-4 years of my career, given the technology and where a lot of smart people that I listen to have told me it's going to go, where things are going, and trying to partner with people, especially in the financial services sector, to try and help them and find out what we can do to better find people in this space, try and find people that are willing to take on this newer technology. And I really think this is a cool thing. At this point, it's a very pivotal point, I think, for blockchain technology, but it's very new and I think it's very exciting. So I'm here for any questions for anybody that's always looking to get answers on our side here. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Drew. Thanks very much. So Jody, I'm not sure if I've got Jody online. Jody, are you on mute? Yeah, if you're here, Jody, unmute yourself. Doesn't look like I can get Jody online at this point for whatever reason, maybe a connectivity problem or something. So I'm a creative guy that I am. I always have a backup plan, at least one. And my best backup plan is actually, fortunately, right online. In fact, you've all met her before. It's Bobby Mascara. So Bobby, I'm going to twist your arm and accidentally just ask you to join the panel tonight. And why am I doing that? Because you have a ton of experience and you actually bring a great perspective on diversity and all that into the panel. So if you don't mind, Bobby, would you mind joining the panel tonight?
Not at all.
Great, I've done it. I faked her out again. I twisted her arm one more time, got her on the panel. Excellent. So smart guy that I am. That said, let's get started. Take a look at a series of questions. We're going to ask each of the panelists, give them a chance to respond. So the first question really is, what is the demand from your perspective in terms of blockchain related skills and roles that you see in the marketplace today? So with that, maybe Richard, you can give us some perspective.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the first way I would answer this question is it's really the full gamut. It's everything from the technology, the strategy, the value architects, business runners, and also even thinking about the ecosystem management, the formation of multi-party systems and the enablement of that. And so when Bobby was doing some of her introductory remarks, completely agree with a number of the roles that she listed there as well. I think from a global organization such as Accenture, we also have a great need for project delivery and management. So the ability to actually execute and deliver these, oftentimes multi-client, initiatives. Another area that I would say, besides your typical, your developers, your software architects, your tech arcs, is also an offering development. So thinking about kind of capabilities and assets and accelerators that Accenture develops to be able to help enable these projects and get them to market faster. That's another area in which we look for talent to be able to help us do that as well. I think one of the aspects that's really unique to Accenture is that we very much are technology agnostic. Although we are heavily involved with Hyperledger and support the work that you all are doing, we actually are agnostic as it relates to the platforms. And so we are looking for talent across all the different leading blockchain platforms. And I think the last point I would say here is we're really looking for individuals to come and help us build really the next innovation horizon across a broad set of focus industries. That's one of the most powerful things about blockchain. There are innovation triggers based on these technologies that allow us not just to incrementally improve a process or improve a business, but ultimately to completely reimagine a process or an industry and create new products and new services and new revenue streams. So we're looking for folks that are motivated and want to help us on that journey.
So Richard, you covered a lot of ground. The one thing I would say is there are 2 points that jumped out at me that make this exercise a little bit different in some ways. Number one, it is a technology that you pointed out. It goes across many industries. So it doesn't matter what your industry is, what your sector, the point of it is the technology can be used there effectively. And so if you have an industry specialization or sector depth of knowledge, experience, and so on, you're going to add a lot of value with this technology, helping out for sure. The other thing you brought up, which is not well covered and is a huge thing. I mean, I've managed a lot of different blockchain projects, and some of them were really, I'll call it just technology focused. They said, just add blockchain to this system. And it's kind of like, okay, so now I've got this immutable trust ledger, fine. But they weren't really, I was really taking, I'll call it a company solution, if you will, that might have had their customers coming into it. But all I was doing is adding technology to it. And what Richard mentioned is a huge thing. And it changes the landscape. It's not, I don't just need administrators and developers and engineers. I do need all of that, sure. But beyond that, what's so different about blockchain is you're usually, not always, but usually you're trying to build a network in a different way across multiple organizations. And I can't stress enough, normal IT stuff that I've been in, it's focused on a corporation, maybe with a couple of divisions, departments, or whatever. And I've been the guy that had to integrate those things. What's so different about this that Richard hit on, which is, and I can't talk about how important it is, some of these networks that you're trying to put together, they've never, these are companies that have never played together before. Think about a football team where nobody's ever played football and they've all played tennis. Now you're saying, no, I want you to all take the field. And I have to find a way to figure out what the value is for each member or each company in the network. What's your value point? How do I deliver value to you? And what, in a sense, do you have to contribute? What's the, in a sense, effort and the investment you have to make? I have to understand that from everybody's perspective. And I have to rethink how these companies work together. So sometimes they're competitors, sometimes they're suppliers, customers, doesn't matter what it is. But I do have to rethink and re-engineer that whole set of relationships. And if you're good at communicating, it really means you're going to have to drive into understanding all of these potential participants and really have to work with them to come up with a view that makes it worthwhile for them to want to invest in this new type of relationship, not just technology, but type of model for how to work together. And I will say, different than, I'll call it even things like AI that's new, and certain types of automation, IoT integration. You can have those things, but you're not always going to be changing the way organizations work together externally in a network. You're changing maybe how they work internally in some cases. But this one usually has a strong network focus. And if you have skills in building business relationships, that's worth a ton, more than many other technologies, I'll say. So I think those are great points, Richard, for sure.
Yeah, the business collaboration piece, which is everything from consortia formation, governance, thinking through the value proposition across the ecosystem. That's actually the hard part. Oftentimes the technology is a little bit more straightforward, but really figuring out how these parties will work together and reimagine a process, and not just think about how I take the analog process today and put a blockchain behind it, but how I use the unique capabilities of blockchain and often other technologies as well to completely reimagine the process. There's a significant change management component to that, which is much beyond the technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're trying to change business rules, governance. And you're absolutely right. It has the technical pieces of that are small and usually well understood. It's the relationships that are so challenging and so different. And for the projects I've worked on, you usually have to have a series of steps, in a sense, to validate the networking side, the business relationship collaboration piece, even more than you do the technology. The technology is technology. That'll go quicker, I think. It's the other part that really needs a lot of, I'll call it engineering rework and so on to get right, for sure. So that's been awesome. Thanks. So with that, Drew, any perspectives on your end about, I'll call it the demand that you see for blockchain related skills and roles at all? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was interested probably about a year ago just to see, because I had searched probably 2-3 years ago on blockchain, and there really wasn't a high demand just on just a keyword search on things like Dice and LinkedIn for jobs to see what people actually had just the word blockchain in a description. And I think a year ago, I mean, through COVID, obviously there's been changes since then, but I noticed that there's probably in the range of like 100 on something like Dice nationally.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
With remote work becoming much more prevalent, I think things are changing. But I just did it a few minutes before signing on here, and it was 291. And I see that even on LinkedIn, there's incremental growth now, I think, as this picks up. And I think the bigger thing that I've noticed is looking at the different jobs and what our clients are asking us for is not someone like a senior level Java developer with a certain amount of experience in that space, but anyone who has a baseline technology background with 3 years of experience with Go, C++, Python, or any language of the such that is transferable and passionate, to Richard's point, getting into this technology. They're looking for right now. I mean, people are very willing. This is the hottest market I've ever worked in the 10 years that I've been in this business. A lot of candidates have an opportunity right now where if there's a willingness or a passion to try and get into this space, you have the opportunity. Like 10 years ago when I came out during the financial crisis in 2010, like it was hard to get a job, like especially staffing. It was difficult. Now, like you can just go to a meetup group and someone who reads a book on the technology will at least be given a shot. It's just how you market yourself, what really drives you, and how you make yourself stand out amongst the other people that are looking in this space. So it's growing and it's not going to stop. I think the first time I ever heard about this was like 4 or 5 years ago from a good friend who works at Salesforce. And I'll leave his name out of here, but he's someone that goes to enterprise organizations that have that kind of relationship with Salesforce, like Larry Ellison's and the Tim Cooks of the world, to tell them what you're not doing with Salesforce given the amount of money you spend on it. And he said to me, listen, you're a fool if you don't really start focusing on getting into the space given how it's going to grow. Because right now there's a gap. And he didn't even mention financial services. I know we were talking before about this being industry agnostic, and I agree. Financial services is where I really see a lot of this being implemented for a variety of reasons, security, but I'm sure Richard knows more about that than I, but I do see that supply chain and logistics was the biggest component to blockchain development, where this was going to be impactful just in daily life in the future. And I really do believe that that's still something that we will see here. So it's growing, and I don't think it's quite at a glacial pace, but it's not the boom that I assumed it would be a few years back. And I think that we're going to see more of this, where if you're interested, if you do not have a background as a blockchain engineer, as some of the people in the chat said, some of the more functional roles that they're looking for right now in blockchain architecture and evangelist, program project management, you'll be given that chance given what your interests are. It's hard to find people. I deal with this every day right now, having to tell managers, listen, if you want to sell someone on this, you're going to have to pay 20% more than what you thought you were going to. That applies to blockchain as well. Like if you are someone looking, you are in a unique position. If you are someone hiring, rethink your practices to try and beat out the competition, because 10 other people are reaching out to the same person you are.
Yeah, great point, Drew. Thanks very much. I think you hit it when you said people, and I actually, this is just Jim's personal opinion, but mostly because I've seen a million job descriptions and I've probably written 100 of them myself. I've almost gotten to the point now where I grade job descriptions like a professor grading papers that are turned in like a term paper. And one of the things that you'll see sometimes is a job description written where what they're looking for is, I'll call it a completely unrealistic set of requirements. And sometimes that can be off-putting to a candidate and say, oh, geez, look at that. They want 30 years experience as a project manager, 10 years of C++, 20 years in networking protocols, and they go down this long list of things that are almost impossible to fill. And then what happens is, a candidate who doesn't have all that experience is going to step back. And the reality in a space that is, as you say, hot and in high demand, you shouldn't back away because you say, well, I saw 10 things on there and I don't qualify on 7 of them at the level they're looking for. There are, in a sense, roles that are less demanding from a skills and experience perspective when the technology is new. And so if you're bringing something to the table, whether it's industry background or some other background technically as well, and as we said earlier, especially business development and business process knowledge, those kind of things, you should be looking at roles and figuring out how to apply. Because definitely a lot of times I've seen in a process where people throw out a job description the first time, it kind of doesn't get a lot of hits, doesn't go anywhere, and they don't really fill the position. And then they come back and they make amendments to it and so on, and they rethink the process a little bit. So yeah, thanks very much for that. That was a good perspective. Bobby, are you available?
I am. I have a different perspective. That's why I didn't consider myself a panelist for this discussion, because it's more about filling your pipeline. And I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm coming at it completely different. I've worked on proof of concepts. I'm taking a proof of concept and making an MVP, minimal viable product. And it's hard work. And I have mentees working on this one project with me. And we've been doing it for 6 months. And the last month of the project was when we started coding. The first 5 months, we're building business relationships. We're trying to figure out, someone mentioned in the chat, work processes, a new way to look at things. And in this technology, it's all about community. And you're going to hear that from the teachers. You're going to hear that from the hiring people, because it's all about people who have not worked with each other before now can work with each other because trust is in the system. So people need to be able to relate with each other, and that's not easy. So there's jobs for that. But just coming from the entrepreneur standpoint, you need, I've taught my mentees project management. I've taught them wiki pages. We've learned how to use all kinds of software programs, all kinds of like graphics. Oh my gosh, social media, trying to get the message out there, just printing up t-shirts. I mean, there were so many little pieces in the process of getting this blockchain social impact project off the ground. Now it's different. People who are on the project right now, because it's not a minimal viable product yet, are all working with just out of the goodness of their hearts, because it's a social impact project. So it's hard for me to say you need these skills, because I'll take anybody. And in this new technology, there's a role for everybody. That's all I need to say on that.
That's a great point, Bobby. Just one thing, Jim, I saw someone in the chat
Yep.
that was discouraged, I think, said they had a high level of anxiety given that they're not a developer, but have 20 years of sales experience. Send me a message. I want to help people. And the bigger thing to convey is, I know we're talking about this from an employer standpoint, but if you are a candidate, again, if ever you are going to be frustrated, filled with anxiety and searching for something new, this is the market to do it in. It will not always be like this. And I'm sure a lot of people on this panel can agree with that. Take advantage of it now. Help yourself. My fiance recently was looking for a new job, and I told her the key things you need to do is market yourself the right way. If a manager is looking at you, you probably are the 100th person they've looked at for everyone that's applied, but do it the right way when you're marketing yourself. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is a reflection of you. A lot of people sometimes just put blockchain in their summary or things that they're passionate about. Great. Someone's going to search, just like I did minutes before this, the term blockchain. You will then show up. Make sure when they take 15 seconds of their time to review you, that you're marketing yourself appropriately so you stand out. Give yourself a shot. You can do video messages on LinkedIn now that last for 15 seconds when someone looks at you. Help yourself. And if you're discouraged, just like this other person in the chat message, shoot me a note. I'll try and help, because I was a recruiter for longer than doing sales, and I hate to see people in a state like that. So that's what I was going to say. I apologize for interrupting, Jim.
No, thanks, Drew. Yeah, and you're right. Thanks for the comments too. In fact, Bobby, if you want to move on to the next question, I think we're going to hit some of the areas Drew talked about. So the question is, how do companies define hiring goals, roles, and opportunities? And within that space, and Bobby added a third category I forgot about, but there's contract roles, there are permanent roles as well. And as Bobby has talked about in her case, there's, in a sense, I'll call it unpaid roles, in a sense where you're learning something, but you're not actually getting paid for it. It's more of a volunteer process as well. So some of them are paid, some of them aren't. So Richard, if you can help me a little bit think about, in a sense, from your experience at Accenture, when you have multiple initiatives, I'm sure you've worked to lead. And from your perspective, how did you define, in a sense, given what you set as goals for an initiative, how did you define the right roles and opportunities to support that?
Yeah. So when we define a project, I mean, we'll go through and develop a solution, and that solution includes looking at what's the talent that we need to be able to deliver this project. And it is almost always a mix of kind of three different things: tech talent, functional talent, whether it be a specific type of process, or whether it be business case, or change management, and the third thing is domain knowledge. Mm-hmm. And we need all three of those mixes to come into the table to be able to deliver a complete solution for our client. And so we'll start there by really understanding, what are we trying to do with the client? What value are we going after? What are the business objectives that we're trying to achieve? Develop that solution, and then we'll start to say, okay, where do we find the talent to be able to deliver this with for our clients? And so we look at both permanent and contract roles. We are doing quite a bit of hiring in the permanent role perspective right now, looking for both entry level as well as experience in blockchain and multi-party systems. We are willing to train folks on blockchain, even into the technologies, where we'll do our own technology deep dives onto the various platforms as well. And again, we're looking at, from a domain knowledge perspective, we are looking across a number of different industries. If I look at North America specifically, financial services and banking, obviously that's an industry that there's a lot of activity in this space. Consumer packaged goods, industrial is another area. Energy, there's lots of activity in energy right now. And again, it's because what's happening here is people are starting to understand the innovation triggers that this technology leads to, and companies are coming together and say, okay, how do I do something completely different than what I'm doing today? When you think about energy, think about energy transition. And when we look at that type of a broad initiative where almost everything has to be relooked at and rethought of, the ability to start to apply some of this technology to be able to help drive that innovation and transformation, is paramount. I think the last thing I would say here is, from a functional perspective, although Accenture works on use cases across a wide gamut of areas, we do have specific focuses on financial infrastructure. So this is everything from digital currencies and central bank digital currencies, and thinking about digital assets, both issuance and custody and trading, and also thinking about kind of financial infrastructure modernization. So things like exchanges and payment systems. Looking at digital identity. So looking at the identity, self-managed identity of individuals, of companies, and of things. The things is a really interesting aspect, and thinking about how you have a connected device like a vehicle or an industrial machine, and how thinking about that identity of that thing across its entire life cycle is also really an interesting area as well. And then lastly, supply chain. Anything supply chain, not just the physical movement of goods, but thinking about the financing and the payment of those goods, but then also thinking about all of the documentation associated with the movement of those goods. So those are kind of people who have that domain industry experience, people who have that functional experience, or people who have that technology experience. All are welcome from a blockchain perspective.
Yeah, awesome, Richard. In fact, there are a couple of points you hit that I really liked. So in a sense, I'll call it the device or the Internet of Things approach. Absolutely right. The technology has changed and the networking has changed. I mean, I have been building device networks going back 30 years, but the technology is so much more advanced now. And in effect, what happens is, in the old world, I'll say, when I was in IT, traditionally, you would look and say, oh, I've got to hire people to manage these things. Now we actually, because devices are more intelligent, we literally can think of them as actors as part of our solution. We can actually assign them responsibilities the way I assign people responsibilities, which is pretty cool. It's all event-driven stuff. And you can actually, as an architect, in a sense, assume that you can give responsibilities to devices and that they're going to meet those responsibilities. They're going to, in a sense, produce events as part of their responsibilities. They'll be able to consume events and react to them. All the kinds of things you actually expect of people, you can now do that with devices in many cases. The other thing you hit, and I got thinking more about it again, is the point about the fact that it is a consortia or a network that you're trying to build in many cases. And you're trying to operate. It's not that you didn't operate with these companies before, maybe in a supply chain or financial network, but the difference is you're trying to change the way they work together. And that takes a lot of creativity. And I'll throw this out there as I'll call it something way out of bounds, so to speak. But I think there are people, if you think about it, you're trying to rethink, understand the incentives that are in place for a consortia or a network today. And you're trying to say, I have to come up with a different model to get them to work differently. Okay, so who might have that actually skill right off the top of their head who's actually had experience? I think of people I know who are what I call heavy duty gamers. Gamers all about behavior, incentives, and designing that stuff. And so if you're somebody who thinks along those lines, you're probably going to be really valuable to helping design a network, if you will, that's going to work effectively. Because it's all about behavior, incentives, that you have to motivate each of the actors to get the whole team to be effective, if you will.
Yeah, Jim, if I can tell you a story about that. My background before joining Accenture is I worked in financial services, and I happened to work at MoneyGram International, which is a network company. The MoneyGram International, for those of you who aren't aware, is a global money transfer company that actually allows people to send money cross-border over a network of over 250,000 agents worldwide. The real strategic advantage of the company is the network. And
Yeah.
you start to think about businesses like Visa, MasterCard, you think about MoneyGram International, you start to see where this network is really an incredibly important element of the business collaboration that we're trying to drive with this technology.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, and you're right. So great point. There are many companies who one of their main assets is the network of relationships they already have. And then you wind up connecting networks of networks at a point. So you can think of Visa, American Express, whoever you want to talk about as payment network, Stripe, and so on. PayPal, there's millions of them. But then when you think about connecting them, they, at a point, to be even more effective, they have to, in a sense, be able to integrate both with their customers and their suppliers. So there's lots of what I call redesigning and rethinking how those networks can work more effectively than just traditionally moving forward the way they have. And that's pretty cool stuff. So your thoughts, Bobby, as well.
Well, I just, when you're looking at this question, and there's been some ideas flowing through the chat about ageism and about remote work. First, I'll take the remote work. Remote work is basically all that you do. Hyperledger doesn't have an office. You work from home, you go to meetups virtually, or you host them and then put them online. So remote work is nothing. If you're in India, my two mentees are from India. They're college students in India. And they are doing fabulous work. They show up at every meeting. Geographic barriers don't matter. Physical barriers don't matter. You work from your computer, you do hard work, people appreciate it. And ageism, the hosts on this call can speak to that. The three of us are in our early 20s, and we've been working at this for 50 years now. But again, it's just the amount of work you want to put in, whether it's remote. I don't even know if you would find an office if you wanted to, and not in a big city at this point. You'd have to probably look real hard. But again, remote work is not frowned upon.
Bobby, it's
Yeah.
around lifelong learning. We've just done more of that lifelong learning.
Yeah. So Drew, can I jump in and ask for your thoughts as well?
Yeah, I looked at this question before, and I thought the contract versus permanent. Okay, so how are things changing on both sides? Because it's two separate budgets a lot of time. Like, I think when I was a very young, naive salesperson, just saying, I'll take whatever you have. Like, I don't care if it's contract or perm. You start hearing them talk about, okay, well, my budget for permanent is far different than the money pot I have for contract. Staff augmentation a lot of times is warranted for contract work. There's some SOW type work, like deliverable based stuff that we do. And I've seen over the past several years, and the numbers reflect this, that permanent has become far more prevalent. I feel like for some time, especially when I was early into my career, like 10 years ago, recruiting, contract was very desirable. There's a lot of people that thought that contract work was synonymous with, you can do 9 months worth of work and it equates to like a year's salary, and they go travel the world for 3 months. And in some respects, some people still do that, but a lot of companies realized or became wise to the fact that you could pay a little bit more, incentivize like the permanent process and joining something, and the fulfillment with being a true part of any kind of company culture permanently versus contract. And we're seeing more candidates drawn towards that. Contract work is still very popular, but especially in the blockchain space, when I was just looking at some of the opportunities internally with my company, like they're looking for people to join, whether it be at a direct customer or internal. And I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon, quite frankly. I mean, I've had offers kicked this week, unfortunately. Good jobs, project managers that pay a lot. I'm paying them a lot out of my end. And they took permanent full-time jobs with companies that they had been talking to for a little bit now. So that I'm finding is kind of where we're at in the market right now. And I don't see that changing, as I said before.
Yeah, good thought. It's funny because I've been on both sides of that in my career. I'm not 50-50 exactly. I don't even know if it's more contract or more perm over my career. But as Bobby said, only a 22-year-old kid. But the deal is, having done both, I'll say what's kind of funny is you work on something, you have an assignment, you want to be successful at it, you want to deliver value back to the people who employ you, whether you're a contractor or you're perm. But the one thing I'll say that is a little different with the perm side if you jump into a team that you like working with and you feel you add value and they like working with you, it's like any team sport. At that point, you go, this was a great experience for me. And if it's a contract, it maybe ends at a year or whatever it is, and you move on to the next one, you start over again. But if you really like working with a team and you really feel you've added value, they like you, it's nice to be able to continue that relationship and build on it, actually. So I can say a lot of times you build great relationships inside of companies. And if you come back for what I call a second season as the permanent employee, then that's really fun. You can leverage and continue to sort of improve what you're delivering because you're building off that base, which is nice. And sometimes there's also long-term contract things. So Drew could say, hey, I like Jim so much, I'm going to hire Jim as my assistant, and I'll keep him on a contract for 10 years. But there are those, they do exist as well. But I think the perm thing, that's one of the biggest attractions I've seen over my career, is the idea that you have that team that you really like being a part of in so many ways. And then it becomes easy to say, gee, I want to stay on that team.
I think the contract to hire model is one that makes a lot of sense. And I try to advocate that to people on the candidate side. I came from a recruiting background, so I try to keep the relationship with the management team. But especially in this market, you need to bring out the guns to get a good candidate. And I'll get involved and sell them on the opportunity and why this company makes sense over the other things you're considering. But one of the things that is routinely said to me is that contract to hire is a distant second to either contract or perm, whatever that person's looking for. They feel like that's just, why am I gonna try out with this company when others are just gonna give me a direct full-time salary or pay me an exorbitant amount of money on a contract rate? And honestly, I don't have a great answer for them, if I'm being candid, other than the opportunity to work with what organization I am. So if I'm lucky enough to have a great client that's backing me and the rate's good and the salary down the road is in line with what they're looking for, awesome. But in general, especially in a piping hot market like this, it's one or the other. And I think a lot of candidates are making that option versus going contract to hire right now.
Yep, thanks. So I see Jody Brockington, I have you here now, right? Jody, if you could unmute yourself.
Sure.
Hey, Jody, nice to see
How are
you.
you?
So I want to welcome you onto the panel, obviously. And then thank you. Jody's from DTCC, and she specializes in diversity talent management. And Jody, I'd like to give you a minute just to introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Well, I came in the middle of a great conversation. I just left a group of budding entrepreneurs or small business owners, Black females specifically, working with us at DTCC. But I am the Director of Diverse Talent Management and Advancement, and specifically work in diversity and inclusion sourcing. Most of us at DTCC, we're the backbone of the financial services, but we are more tech than we are fin. So we compete more with the Microsoft and cloud, AWS, and all of them, just as much as we compete with other banks who are looking for fintech specialists. But for us, I was about to type into the chat that we have been very successful in converting a lot of our contractors, and vice versa, where sometimes some people have worked with us permanently, have become consultants. So we are a pretty fluid company, but we are definitely looking for permanency. So places within our company that we might have contracted out to EY and other companies to do some of our work, we are now hiring those teams. So those are teams of 13 to 20 people, 10 to 15 people, depending on what it is, and everything from blockchain, Bitcoin, management, app development, anything that you would find in the technology space. So cloud, C++, SQL, Java, Python, you name it, you got it, we want it. But in this space, it's even more difficult to find diversity. And for us at DTCC, I'll be very clear that diversity for us is just about anyone but white men and Asian men, because we have plenty. It's not that we do not hire them, they're just not considered to be diverse. And in some instances, though, there are white men that diversify a department. So our legal department is very women heavy, and I had to get on them for not having men in the hiring process, just like I would get on another department. So we are constantly looking for great talent in the fintech space. And right now we have about 300 open roles. But the best part about us is that we're small, so we're tiny and mighty. So we're only 5,000 employees total. So even when we hire 3 people, it's a big shift. 10 is a major shift. and 20 is, so we have also hired over 600 folks through COVID, and just continuing to move down our pathway. We've been very consistent. We have a really good, we only have a 6% of, in terms of turnover. And that's just gone up recently. You always teeter between 5 and 6. And now with the Great Resignation, we're still strong, steady, and stable. So this is a great place to work. If you're able to get a contract through someone, good. It's very hard to get a contract with us. But once you do, you are there for at least a few years. We're a little bit longer in our contract space. And then we do look for permanent homes. So the hardest challenge I have is trying to bring people from the outside in, because people never leave DTCC once they're there. So you'll meet most people and they'll say 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. I'm only there 2.5 so far, but that's a long stint for me. So that's my spiel. I hope that if there's something that you're interested in at DTCC, you can definitely reach out to me. I will put my LinkedIn profile link in there. Please connect with me. And I'm here to answer any other questions that you might have.
So Jody, that was great to bring, I'll call it a perspective. It's obviously DTCC is, I'll call it aggressive. When you think about the numbers, you said, 5,000 people more or less total, but you're adding, 600 during the pandemic, 300 now kind of a thing. That's a big percentage increase for an organization that's not Microsoft or IBM or somebody at that scale. So obviously there is a big need to add talent there, which is a good thing. So, and it also helps a lot to think about. The other thing I really like is the fact, like Bobby had said earlier, in a sense, there's a wide open door for anybody, regardless of your background. And there are different types, as you've heard before, kinds of, in a sense, skill sets we need, not only technical, but ones, built around, project management and other things, not just engineers alone. So, and we, again, have a mix. I think, as we heard earlier from Richard, that Accenture's in a different model. They're doing a lot of different types of, I'll call it, business consulting solutions for different types of industries. So they may have a different skill set and different types of roles than DTCC is looking for as well across the planet. So yeah, thanks for adding that. Bobby, if you
and I wanted to at least add too, we have an internal consulting arm. So we brought our consulting in-house, also was done externally. So for that, we always need a variety of different talent, which mixes between technology, finance, and then business development, innovation, and strategy. So
excellent. Perfect. Yeah, right. That's another area that you can manage. And again, I like the idea, because I've been part of what I call those enterprise type teams before in the past. And again, it comes back to the same role. Instead of going through outside consultants, and sometimes those have long-term relationships, when you bring them in-house, there's a chance to focus for those teams more permanently, in a sense, understanding, in a sense, the environment, the landscape they're in. And hopefully over several years, they build a deeper knowledge of each of the business departments they're supporting and servicing, which is really good. So I've seen that work out very well. So with that, let me go on to the next topic, which makes sense for all of the panel. So Richard, if I can ask you, it's how do we have candidates, in a sense, build their skills, brand themselves from your perspective, maybe, and how should they think about maybe training for roles that they're interested in? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I think get involved in the industry groups and consortiums. Just exactly like what Hyperledger is doing today. I think that's a great way to get involved. I think read the thought leadership that's out in the marketplace. There are luminaries that are focusing on what's going on in this space, whether it be from a technology perspective or some of the leading use cases. Keep up on that. I even personally myself have about 5 Google alerts that come out to me every day on specific topics in this area, and it helps me to just keep informed of who's doing what and what's going on, and what the current chatter is about, in this space. And I would encourage all of you to do that as well. I think the other aspect here is, it's really, and I saw a lot of in the chat, we're talking a lot about curriculum and how to learn in this space. And yes, that's a great place to start, but it's not just about, my technical knowledge or how I study about what's happening in the space. It is about its application. And so you got to jump in and do something, whether it is something where you volunteer for some type of a project, or you are fortunate to get onto a role on a project. It's about the application. I can't tell you how many folks that I talk to personally where, you know, I ask them 2 questions to find out about blockchain. Describe it to me like I'm your grandfather. And 2, tell me how it's going to change the world. Because that is, to me, can you easily explain what is often a very complex topic? And then secondly, tell me how you're going to apply it to really create value. And I think if you can kind of think about that as you think about what your skills are, your brand, your story as it relates to blockchain and multi-party systems, I think that will serve you well.
Excellent. Yeah, those are 2 great points. One, make the technology easy to understand, because for a lot of people it isn't. So they read articles or whatever, they're trying to get into it. And the way it's presented many times is complex. But yes, I think you're right. Somebody who is going to really add value is going to be somebody who can understand everybody else's perspective and make it simple. And so that's one key part. The other thing that actually was just the opposite out of my mind was, now tell me how it's going to change the world. I mean, that's one of those things. I could answer it in 2 questions, like, oh, it'll be much better, but you really have to be more concrete than that. You have to apply it to an example kind of a thing. So both good points. Jody, let me switch over to you and get your thoughts on, in a sense, you know, let's say I'm a candidate out there, doesn't matter who I am, but I'm looking and I go out there and go, oh my God, there's 1 million jobs at DTCC. I think I want to apply to all of them. Tell me, what would I logically do when I look at your website?
No. First of all, don't apply to every job. That
Right.
Like a crazy applicant, meaning like you have no direction. And granted, I will take full responsibility that I don't think that our job descriptions are some of the best. So sometimes you can be skewed one way, but I would always say it's almost like it's like football. You want to go for that quarterback role. The one you really want is the one you want to apply for, because you do want to get in the pipeline. And once you're there, in most cases, in this case, if you're going to apply for DTCC job and now you know who I am, you can definitely use me to help you navigate, but then navigate slowly. A talent advisor who might reject you for the job that you applied for can help you navigate for the next one. And something else. Also, our ERGs within DTCC all have 2 recruitment chairs that will also help guide you through the matrix of our job descriptions, and also our roles. Our departments are kind of cryptic as well. So not everyone has a BTO and a GBO and a DTMA, like all these acronyms that mean nothing to you on the outside world, but how to divide you up. Even within IT, we have multiple layers within a department, right? So you have, so apply for one role, but admit, like say in your cover letter in your email that I'm applying for 2275, but I'm also interested in 2274, 2273. So they get an idea and tell them why. And then I think the other false, thing is that we all try to hire or overhire at times, where there's 20 things on there. And we really only need the 5, and we really want to train you on stuff. You need to have some growth too. So I think often candidates feel like they have to have everything and then don't apply, or they're overqualified. And that's a bad space to be in as well, because we then think, oh, you don't want to stay here. Like you're just going to come here for a minute and then go take that contract or do something else. So there's a fine line. And to make sure that your resume, if you're applying for a second role after applying for a first one, there should be some changes in that resume. And often people send the same exact one. And people on our side definitely pay attention to that. And then there's parts of technology for sure that's trainable. So, or that we know if you've done Python, you might already know some Java. If you know this, then you might know some, like that. You don't have to have everything that's on there. That is like the wish list versus the must have. So often you get that information from the talent advisor as you're applying.
Well, a couple of things I really like. Number one, not every company does this, but the fact that I can apply for a job, not get chosen for the job, but in effect through your, I'll call it recruiting team, take a look at me as a candidate and say, hey, you know what? We should give this guy feedback other than the simple thank you for applying letter, right? So I'll get the automated thank you for applying, but we've already filled that position. Thanks anyway. But what's kind of cool is if you looked at me as a recruiting team and said, hey, you know what? We didn't pick him for that role. Fair enough. But he has these skill sets and maybe these other things. I'll send them an email and say, are you interested in one of these 2 other jobs? You might be a good fit. That kind of interactive feedback, if you will, is not common today from, I'll say, 90-something% of the companies. So most companies, whether, I don't know if they're not staffed well for, I'll quote recruiting or whatever, but they don't give you that kind of feedback for sure. That's a huge win for us. And you make a great point. Not only the resume, but even my cover letter, obviously, both of those should be targeted more toward the job I'm going after. So if you tell me, hey, Jim, take a look at 2274, that might line up with what you want to do, I should actually go back and honestly try to take a hard look at not only the job description, try to read between the lines a little bit, understand it, and then try to figure out what makes me special about 2274. How do I fit? Because it shouldn't be just up to the recruiter. I should be able to do enough to try to think that through and maybe tailor my resume to fit that. So those are great points.
And I can attest that people who have applied for roles and didn't get the first one, kind of like running for elected officials, have come back and been very successful the second time because, one, they understand our company better, they understand what they needed to come with, and we can be the advocate the second time around saying, oh my God, the first time John applied, this was already down the pipeline too far. They already almost were at offer. We just didn't have something that was in alignment. And often we'll even reach out back to you. And our system is set up that once you have a profile, which is why even if you don't see a job today, something can come up later, like Amazon. You brought these shoes, you might like these shoes. You bought this jacket, so you apply for this kind of job. And we will also then move, like when something comes up that's similar, they will get it. They don't always get it right because I'm still on the list and I sometimes get things that I'm like, I would never do that. But we at least try to match based on what you have put into your application. So that you should also take some time to really fill it out and really get as much information there as possible. So
you're great. Thanks. Drew. Drew and I don't go back 20 years. I do go back more than 20 years in jobs and career and all that. But I do like working with Drew a little bit, and I'll say why. In a sense, he tries to help you think through who you are and what you're trying to get done. So I can go to Drew and say, hey, I see a job for director of IT for company X. I want that job, send him my resume. And instead of just shoving it over the wire and saying, hey, no problem, we'll just drop it in there, he actually did spend the time to go through and say, hey, let's take a look at some options to think about what you want. And I know I can talk directly or indirectly through the hiring manager, try to get you a better feel than what you see in the job description for what they're really looking for. As Jody said, where are they really in the process? They already made an offer to somebody else. And in a sense, they may open the door again if that person turns them down, who knows? But in a sense, if you have somebody, whether it be Jody on the inside in HR, if you're lucky enough to get a direct contact with Richard, or if you're talking to Drew, if you have somebody that can help you understand more than you know about what the company's looking for, that's a really valuable thing. So Drew, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I don't want to be redundant, but I appreciate what you said, Jim. You've made me look good a few times here, and I appreciate that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that, Drew.
Being transparent, like, let's take it to bare bones. Like, the process is typically about your brand. It was always in the past about, let me see your resume. Do you have the years of experience? Are the things that I need on there, the technologies? Where did you go to school? Name recognition is big, especially in this market that I work in here in Boston. It's very big. And it's, how do you present when you have a 30-second snapshot? People don't have the attention span to go through your background for 30 minutes. Some might, depending on the job that you will. I don't want to exclude people of doing that, but typically you're up against 300 other people that applied for the same job that you are. And when people look at your background and your LinkedIn profile, and as I've seen in the chat here, I don't think there's anything wrong with the people that have been outside of this market for 20 years and you're trying to get in now. Okay, show me how you're passionate about getting in. There's certifications that you can get within blockchain. There's different meetup groups that you can go to. There's things that you can do where even if you are working as a barista, you can make that be the 8th thing that they see on your resume when they search about why are you applying to this job. Jody brought this up. If you're applying to the same job over and over, you don't change your background, I don't take you seriously, even if it is a piping hot market right now and very candidate driven. But as Jim and I were alluding to, like, you want to go through and be methodical about this. This is chess, not checkers. Why is the manager going to want to talk to you and not one of the other 300 people? What is it going to do? Put yourself in their position. In closing, think about if you were reading your resume and then immediately you see an icon pop up that the manager viewed your LinkedIn profile. Why are they going to respond to you and not just gloss over and go to the next person? Always think that way. That's the best advice I could give anybody who's looking to either break into this space or try and go deeper. That's it.
Great.
It may be old school, but think about being in an elevator with the CEO of the company that you want to work for, right?
Right. That's great.
And between floor 1 and 5, you've got to tell them what your brand is. And if you can't easily say, this is what I do and this is what I can do for you, you need to practice that. You need to write it down, and you need to own it.
Yeah, great point, Richard. You're right. I've done a bunch of things in my career, but one of them was financial advisor. And in that role, they said, you'll be lucky if you get 30 seconds to explain who you are to somebody. 30 seconds to the outside. It's probably going to be more like 10. And if you can't get them interested in what I call that elevator pitch of going from floor 2 to floor 3, you need to sit down and rethink, in a sense, what you want to put on the table for people to see first, for sure. So,
and you don't, and the way to think about it is you don't have to get the job in the 30 seconds. You just have to get them to ask you the second question. That's
exactly right. So in fact, a really smart guy who was much smarter than me, when he was trying to teach me how to do this job, he says, I was all pumped up. They said, go write your elevator speech for this thing. I said, oh yeah, I'm going to be a great financial advisor. So I wrote down all the things about why I was so smart, right? And he says, when I meet people, you have that initial thing, hi, Richard, and they always say, if you're spending more than 5 seconds together, it's going to be, well, who are you? And so that usually you get a chance to define yourself quickly. And he says, when people ask me that question, he says, I only have one answer. It's, I help people. It's like, what? And so you're always, because it's such a short answer, you're probably going to get a follow-up. If you don't get a follow-up, not a problem. It's very productive. But if they ask you how you help people, boom, you've now got a conversation going, as opposed to me launching into the first half of my resume and saying, hey, Richard, I've done all these 20 things, and hoping that throwing out all those 20 things, one of those will interest you. It's far better to open up that real door to a conversation that way. So that is a great thought. Let's move on to the next one, Bobby, if we can. The next slide. Thanks. So flipping it around, we've talked a little bit about this, but again, we're going to ask how we've talked about, in a sense, what a candidate can do. This may be a simple one, I'll say as a question, but think of from a candidate's perspective, Richard, if you can think about this, how should candidates go looking for companies and jobs that may fit them well?
Yeah, you have to do your research. Look at the types of projects the company's working on, what ecosystems are they participating in, leading, read their thought leadership, follow their luminaries in the business, engage with them, through LinkedIn, comment on their posts, and really look at the industries in which they're focused on to ensure that they are industries that you also are interested in working in. So that's kind of, I would say, the mechanics of getting kind of is the domain, the subject matter that they're working in, right? But then I think I can't overimpress enough. You also have to look at, is it a cultural fit for you? Are they doing work that interests you? Do they have the work environment that meets your needs? Are you working for a team and a company that values your voice and your input? And also look at how they're giving back in the market, looking at the tech for good initiatives that they may be investing in or leading in or supporting. So I think it's really a combination of looking at the work that they're doing from just a practical perspective. What are the use cases? What are the industries? But then I think it's also about, are they the right fit for you personally?
Yeah, great point. You're right. I've thought much more about the concept of, I almost think of it as like teams that you want to play on. You like the people that you're playing with, are they going to like playing with you, kind of a thing? That whole culture fit. It's not just what the business does, but it's actually what are they focused on, and the people. And I can't say it enough. I worked in one place and it was amazing. People used to come to me and say, "What's it like to work for this company?" I said, "Look, I said, the thing about this company that's so different than other companies I've worked for, when you sit on the bench and you look at who else you're playing with, you look to the left, you look to the right, and you go, oh my God, what a team. I feel like I'm on the Barcelona dream team sitting here with these people. It's that level. When you feel like you're on a team that's strong, that's solid, it's a unique feeling. And it's not one you probably want to move away from. That's why those permanent roles that offer that kind of opportunity are really good. The other thing is, in a sense, trying to understand that from the outside a little bit is different. It's not easy to do. And so, as you said, follow the company more, don't just go to Indeed and say, oh, look, job description, project manager. I think I want that. I think Accenture is a good company, whatever their market cap is. Really, as Richard said, do the homework a little bit more, especially about in the area you're going to be working. And the other point you made that's really good, which is good for Bobby, I think, is that if you don't have any background in blockchain, why not start working with Bobby on the giving chain, right? And then, yes, you're doing some stuff on your own training, which is good technically to say, I understand this stuff better. But if you can get some real experience, as Richard said, that you bring to the table, it's not like, oh yeah, I passed this course, that's good. But more than that, I actually contributed to this thing that, as he said, is social good focused. I didn't get paid for it, but I was an important part of X, whatever X was, on delivering that. That really gives some experience as well.
I'm
So
always really personally, oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
No, go ahead, Richard.
I was going to say, I'm always personally impressed when I'm interviewing somebody and they ask me about work that Accenture has done, because it shows me they've done their research. And what I'm also intrigued at is what the question they're asking me about that, because perhaps they're coming at the credential or the use case from a slightly different perspective than I am, and I'm interested to hear their point of view and what they think about the credential as well. So when a candidate asks me that, that's a point where I lean in, because I want to learn more about what they're thinking as it relates to what something we've done in blockchain.
Excellent. Yeah, Jody, can I get your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Richard covered most of it. I call it the trifecta of your passion, your paycheck, and the environment. You're getting paid enough so that you're not really thinking about what you're doing the work you want to do because you're passionate about it and you're around the people you want to be. And I often start with younger folks to think about what brands do they love? What are they eating, drinking, wearing, seeing every day? Because those places have jobs, right? So it's not like, oh, I just want to do this for the money. You want to do it for the money and you want to do it even for that. So for me, I think the sooner you find a company, the better. And I think often we overlook companies like myself at DTCC that are smaller, that are not as well known. A lot of people still don't know what Accenture really does, right? So when someone does some research and they can really come to you and tell you about your company, maybe some of the stuff that you're doing in the community, some of the initiatives that you have that are larger than the company, that are impacting the communities they live in. It's how I ended up at Merrill Lynch. They supported every nonprofit I ever volunteered for, worked at, loved, and was a part of. So that was my first bite into the financial services industry. Unfortunately, it was during the recession, so that was quick, a couple of years and out. But I think if you find that right environment and that they're going to help, that there's growth potential for you and that company, you can stay there for a long time and continue to reinvent yourself, that you're not kind of stuck doing that one thing unless you really love that one thing. Like there's people at my company that I'm like, you've been doing this for 20 years, the same thing. And it's like the roles evolved, but and they have evolved as people and technology has changed, but they really like what they do, so they stay, right? Versus someone who comes in new for some innovation and idea that you want to look for a place where you can grow. And I don't know if there are any students here or those who are finishing up school, but we have always about 75 to 100 internships, and we start as early as freshmen, and we look for multiple year interns to come back. So that gives you an opportunity to be in different departments and try new things. And then we have an EDGE program for those of you who might be graduating from graduate school or undergrad, which is like winning the NFL lottery, because you have a job for 2 years and we spend about 150K or so in training in that first year. So you're getting paid to go to school and learn all the stuff that you didn't quite have, or you say you know Python, but not to this degree. So we do a lot of training, and even for our new incoming employees, we're not expecting you to know it all. And if you took the same job with Richard as you would with us, how they would do it, how Richard's folks train you and what we need you to do are slightly different. We all have our own secret sauce. So you don't want to come in as a know-it-all. You want to come in as someone who can modify, change, flexibility, and know that you're going to have to learn something new on almost a daily basis. So we look for the people who are trying to roll up their sleeves, and also potentially jump in for someone else. If Richard's out one time or I'm out one day, that the wall and the world can keep spinning. So that trifecta of passion, paycheck, and your environment is key to your success. And also when things are not going so well in the work or at the company, that you still have your passion, and you're still able to find yourself. So I think that research piece is key. Like, do as much research as possible about that company, how long they've been involved, who founded it, how many times have they had turnover, if that's a concern for you. So there's things that are going to be more important to you as a person than as and then it'll attach to your profession. So everything Richard said times 10.
Yeah, and I'll just steal 2 words I heard there. You said a lot. I'm just going to pick on 2. Number 1, you did say passion, and I think you're right that if you're going to go, it's not just the job. That whatever the role is, you got to care about the job. But the bigger thing is you have to be passionate about what you think you're going to be adding and what that company's doing. You have to be passionate about that. So hopefully you like the skill sets you bring. Hopefully you like the experience and the kind of work you're going to do. But you really have to be passionate about the whole thing. And that does make a huge difference. I've seen that when I was on the hiring side in the candidates, right? So I could have 2 people that look similar, but one was dramatically passionate about, like, gee, I really understand what you guys are doing. I've done the research. I've been looking at something like this, worked in a space similar. If they've really driven deeply into it, you can sense that difference right away. And you realize that when you hire this person, that they're bringing a higher level of energy and probably commitment to the team. And that's a huge thing, right? So Jody said it. I think, you can say, well, here's another candidate that has, whatever, 20 years of experience, not 5. They've got all that. And they're, I'll call it, not as passionate about the role, not as passionate about the company and what your team is going to be doing. They're going to bring certainly good skill levels in. But the question is, when you look at it, do you really want somebody that's really going to, in a sense, have the energy to drive forward on a consistent basis, number 1. And number 2, to your point, the hardest thing in all these things, I would tell you, anybody that's really working today, the business is changing. The company that you're in is changing, and the technology is changing at a rapid rate. So what does that mean? That means you have to be set up to be highly adaptable above all else. So it doesn't matter that I'm the world's best mainframe COBOL programmer on planet Earth. What matters is when I go to work for that company, even if that's the skill set I'm starting with, I have to be, in a sense, probably more flexible today than I was 5 or 10 years ago to adapt to the way the team has got to work and what they need from me, getting back to your training point as well. Drew, can I get some thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think, what Jody and Richard said, I completely agree with, and I once again don't want to be redundant here, but I think if you're looking for something right now, especially in this market, people are looking for you. Like, you're in a very opportune situation where trying to either look on LinkedIn or Dice or Career Builder or just Google search companies that are looking for people like yourself. It's very easy to align yourself with them. And then the biggest thing that I don't think people take advantage of is networking. Like, I remember years ago, I couldn't find an Angular JS developer to save my life. They all were making way more money than I could pay. and they seemed to not exist right around when the technology got really hot. So I went to meetup groups and I started talking to people, and I started better understanding the tech and getting to people who didn't even have a LinkedIn profile or a GitHub or a resume, but they still got jobs. And I think sometimes it's trying to think outside the box of just, okay, I have a resume, I'm going to submit something, and trying to meet people. Also, if I was applying for a job, I don't know, with Richard or Jody, I'd probably look at them on LinkedIn and see if they're connected with anybody I know. Hey, can you make a connection? Can you at least take 5 seconds out of your day to make the intro, because they know you and I know you and I need your help. Like, I knew a friend recently that just applied for a job at a company that's really well known here in the Boston area. I knew the recruiter of that job that was linked to it. I shot them a message. They were ushered to the front of the line. You're not always given that luxury, but you got to at least take a stab. This is a numbers game. You can't treat it like that, though. You have to be particular with changing your resume, your profile, your background, everything that the job is looking for. At least give yourself a chance. Don't be discouraged by the jobs that are posted. They have a laundry list sometimes of what they need, not what they will accept. A lot of people, managers I talk to, I say, please consider someone who's 75% of the job given the market right now. Give yourself a chance. Or, okay, keep looking for 100% of it. We'll talk in 3 months from now about what we need to do. So try and, once again, not to be redundant, but put yourself in the shoes of the people looking for you and try and connect with people. This is not about resume anymore. It's about your brand and who you know. That's always been the case. People hire people they know, or at least have a referral from someone, or know that you're real, or you've done a good job. So references go very far. So that's probably my best advice I can give, especially in this space, to find something.
Cool. Thanks, Drew. Bobby, if you can move us on to the next one. Thank you. So now I'm flipping it back, and I'll say we've covered this to a degree. We'll try to hit it. If you have anything new to add, I'm going to say, how do companies find candidates and create a candidate pipeline for roles? Obviously, we're all familiar with either company sites where you can go out and look at roles that exist. We're also familiar with the, I'll call it, third-party sites like Indeed or Monster or any of those other ones, Dice and so on, that also list jobs as well. But Richard, let me ask you, you talked about how you think through the goals, how you think through the resources that you might need for a new project or a new area you're working in. Give me a picture a little bit of, from your perspective, how Accenture thinks of setting up a candidate pipeline. What do you do to find resources, in a sense, to fill your pipeline?
Well, this forum.
All right, there you go. Thank you so much, Richard. Unpaid
that was all of our answers,
everybody.
right there.
I just want you to know, I haven't paid Richard a dime.
Yeah.
So.
But I will say we are active in these types of organizations and these types of efforts. We've actually posted roles, on your site and others, networking. We also look at who is commenting about this space in the market, and we'll do outreach. So we'll directly outreach people if we see an interesting point of view, for instance, that aligns with something that we're working on or where we need talent. And so we've done that as well.
Yeah, it's a great thought, a great point, because some people I know who work in these roles, not everybody, but some people, in a sense, will take the experience they've done or the things they're focused on, and they'll actually write a LinkedIn post or something like that. And they're sharing, in a sense, what's important to them a little bit, and giving people to see who they are a little bit, at least indirectly, even on a small topic. So that can be helpful as well. Jody, your thoughts?
No, not to be repetitive. I mean, I think, you have to find the talent in the spaces that are important. Right behind me, you'll see all the HBCUs there's hundreds of them. But we did a lot of research to narrow down which schools had departments in specific areas, computer science, that made sense to us and where our offices are and what the communities we're in. So although there's a lot of places that we could go, I think companies are very targeted as to what their needs are, where they need them from. And so instead of just casting such a wide net, because we also don't need large numbers, it's the idea that we can be very targeted, and we do our research just like we ask candidates to do theirs to find them. So making sure that we have matched up the right talent with what our company is going to need now, and also looking at it more futuristically. So also reaching down younger, and earlier on. So we become a brand that people know. Everyone drinks Tropicana because their parents drink it or whatever in your house. So we want to also become that name with some people who can grow up with us and others now that are kind of getting to know us. So I think we continue to create that. And like I said before, someone might not be good for a role now or something that's not available, but a graphic design role opens up. And when they first apply, there was nothing, right? Or they're looking for a marketing role or a UX role. And so we continue to stay in touch and always look for a BCD plan for any of our candidates. As long as we've had some communication with them, they've had some success, and really hone in on our, what we call our, bronze and silver medalists, those who made it kind of to the final rounds, but we just didn't have another spot for them at the time. So we stay in touch. So
yeah, so that gives me a great thought on how you manage, I'll call it that pipeline. And it is interesting to know, I guess it's nice to see that companies will actually spend a fair amount of effort to try to look out the other direction and say, who's out there? In a sense, who are we interested in? Who do we want to follow up with? Not just individually, but potentially, as you pointed out, organizations like certain colleges, certain places I might go to try to fill those intern programs you talked about earlier, and so on. That's interesting. Drew, on your thoughts on companies building pipelines?
I think for us it's different. Obviously, the way Jody and Richard would find someone, I mean, especially right now, it's about their brand and what they're selling and why you would want to join for it. And I feel like for both companies, I know them very well. Like there's a reason to join. For us to build a pipeline. I mean, we have a database that's 50 years old now. We have millions of people that we've had relationships with, people who have worked with us, people that we're familiar with in this network. I've been in Boston for a decade doing this. Like with that, I have relationships with people like you, Jim, and others in the space that I want to help. And I feel like really having a relationship in a relationship driven industry, just like what I do, you have to be able to sort through keywords and buzzword searches that a lot of managers do and tell them, listen, when I talk to a manager now to vet a requirement, I say to them, I need to know 3 things that you're looking for, the keys. Like, what is it? Because I can send you a resume and they might have the right keywords, but this is what I need to describe to someone. So when I call them or my recruiters call them and I'm their 14th call that day, they'll pick it up and they'll talk to me and tell me why they're looking. And you have to match those two, because I feel like people treat our line of work sometimes like it's very transactional and you're ordering a pizza. That's not how you find good people. Like, you have to be willing to put the time in, especially right now, and invest in someone like myself to go find these people. It's hard. This is hard. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of networking. And I mean, what we're doing right now, I think, is a great thing. You're putting in the effort and you're showing that you care about something. A lot of people don't sometimes, and they get overlooked. So I always say that if you're going to try and build out a pipeline of candidates for any specific requirement, there's probably things that are transferable. I placed a cybersecurity architect 3 weeks ago. Someone else in the same department's looking for somebody. I had 3 people that interviewed for that. 2 did well. 1 got the job. The first person that I'm marketing to the second job was the silver medalist. It's like, hey, this person did great for your colleague. And it's very, once again, relationship driven and networking. Like that's very important here. So you got to get creative. And I feel like some people don't do that. My line of work, they won't put in the time to do that. They do think that if you have a certain amount of words on your resume, it'll fit. And it just doesn't. People want someone that's not going to be there just day one to fill a seat. They want to think about who's going to be there for the next 3-4 years. Why are they going to want to find my job better than someone else's? And that's an important thing to understand.
Yeah, so you make a great point. I'll say, and I'm reading between the lines, like I like to do, but I'll say that the way you describe it, what you're showing is respect for the client who's doing the hiring. You're showing respect for his time, because what you're saying is, I'm not going to take 5 or 10 resumes and throw them over the fence and say, hey, here's 10. I saw that job description. I hope one lands. It's no, if I think I have done the due diligence for the client, then I'm going to say, okay, Jim, I will think, that, yeah, you're a candidate. I can put you in the pool, but I'm not going to just throw anybody over the fence to get that job. As you said, you got 1 million people in my database, of which probably 50,000 say I'm a project manager. And I could easily do a scan and say, here's 50. I'll send you 50 names. Why don't you tell me who you want? what you've done if you do that is you're actually abusing the client's time, and you're probably less likely, as you point out, to be able to have a solid relationship with a client. They're not going to come back next time and say, oh yeah, I'll take Drew's phone call because last time it didn't pan out well. So you're right. You have to be very careful and very selective, in a sense, who you push forward and how you help the candidate get there, obviously, which is really a different approach, I think, for recruiting as well. So Bobby, if you can go to the next slide. So actually, you know what? I'm not going to push this one. We actually covered this, I think, with all three. So I want to push the next slide, Bobby. All right. So this one actually matters. I've been there on both sides of this one. I've been the guy that was the new guy coming onto a team, but I've also, in a sense, onboarded people on my side of the fence who were new to my team. And I've had to think on this problem in both ways. And so I'll say the best person I ever worked for as a manager was awesome. He had a model, and he would say his model as a manager, which I clearly stole from him, was just to think about carefully. If you were putting a team, he used to say, I'm the coach. And he says, I want you, as Jody said earlier, to be the quarterback. I want you to go out there and be the quarterback of the team. I want you to take the field, and I want you guys to, it's on your team to win the game, so to speak. But he goes, I don't want you to go onto the field if I haven't done my homework as the coach to properly prepare you for success. So and it was really a great model, because he'd say to me, and he would do it to anybody that worked for him, he goes, look, you got to tell me, what do you need to be successful? You know, we talked about what the assignment is, what the role is, what you're trying to get done. Now that we agree on those objectives and what your team's responsibilities are going to be, I need you to tell me what you need to be successful. And so it was that negotiation. He would literally take his homework assignments and do them. So when I think about the first 90 days of getting somebody onto a team, if I'm a manager, I'm thinking about, what do I want that person to accomplish? How am I going to set them up for success? The reverse of it is, if I'm the guy coming into a new team, I'm asking myself, I need to understand the team better, how I can help the team as a whole, not just try to learn new stuff, which is important, but also understand, in a sense, what I can bring to the team, how the team works, how do I learn to be a part of that team effectively. So I got challenges on both ends. So Richard, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have we call them a new joiner. When we have a new joiner, they go through an orientation program. But then one of the things that we do very quickly as they come into the practice, into the blockchain and multi-party systems practice, is we pair them up with a buddy. Because of the fact that, you know, we are a very large organization. We have, I think the last number I saw, 624,000 employees globally. It's probably a low number. It's probably higher than that. And so it's a big place. And so we want to make sure that people have someone that can help them with the everyday questions that will naturally come up. But then the second thing is, we get them working on stuff in this space immediately. Whether it be, you know, working on POV, or maybe we're doing some type of a point of view, or a proof of concept. Maybe we're building up an asset, and I personally try to get them working on client deliverables as quickly as I possibly can, because that's why they join a company like Accenture, is to do that type of work with clients. Secondly, one of the things that we really encourage is, we talked about networking a moment ago to find jobs. Well, in a company with 624,000 plus employees, you also have to network. So it's about networking within the company. Someone told me when I first got here is that there's an expert in everything at Accenture, you just have to find them. Mm-hmm. And so that's really interesting words to kind of live by, to make sure that you constantly are building up your network, and you rely upon that network to say, can you help me with this? Or do you know somebody that knows this, to bring them in when we're trying to do solutioning for clients. And then lastly, you know, be inquisitive, listen, right? You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so do it in that order. Provide inputs and ideas. But focus on the client need is at the center of defining the approach and drive action. So it's always focused on, you know, the objectives that we're trying to drive for our client.
Yeah, great perspective, because what I just heard, and it's maybe I'm slower than the average person, because I think I learned those lessons, but it took me a while, is that it's listen first and understand before you respond, period. Whether it be on my own internal team, same thing with a client. In fact, when I used to talk to clients, the thing that I always found fascinating was it's nothing to go into a client and ask the president of the company and say, hey, help me understand with your team what you're trying to do, right? And then help me understand how you think you want to get there. Those are more normal questions. In fact, usually they'll offer those up right away saying, hey, Jim, I want you to partner with us, help us do it. The thing that's always interesting, if you really want to get somewhere, is try to understand the history of the team you're looking at, whether it be an internal team or an external team. Every team that's been around has successes and failures in their backlog, so to speak. And if you listen to what their goal is and you understand a little bit more about their history, you probably have a better probability of being successful in helping shape a strategy to move forward. And I like the focus on the client side. Like I say, and I think Jody mentioned it before too, enterprise teams, if you're working internally for a company, you still have clients. They're just internal, they're not external. So
Exactly right.
thanks. Jody, your perspective?
I don't like going after Richard. He says all the stuff.
All right. I apologize.
We only have 5,000 employees. And we do have about 2,500 contractors, more or less, but they are not included in some of our onboarding, but we do have buddy system as well. And there are a lot of onboarding activities that happen for all new joiners. I must say, I still remember mine quite nicely, where I met everyone from security guards to people who spoke text languages that I've never heard of, all in one day, but to kind of give you a good flavor of who's going to be around in the environment that you have chosen for your workplace. But we do a variety of mentoring programs, both peer-to-peer, same level, different departments, different areas. And we even have a reverse mentoring program at DTCC. So you could be a senior associate and mentor someone in the C-suite because they need some help and some action. So we're trying to even the playing field and allow people to meet as often as possible. Plus we rely on my department and the ERGs. We do a variety of different programs, voices of inclusion, different issues that are going on, from burnout to Black Lives Matter, depending on the topic of the moment and the day, to just get people connected. And as Richard was saying, networked within a network, that you have access to everyone's email, but if you don't use it, or there's someone you need to reach out to on Teams. So getting people familiar with the tools that can help you do better at your job and do better as you develop your own career. We have a whole bunch of resources, I'm sure similar to Richard, of learning and development tools, training, executive presence, anything that you'd want to learn, we have. It's just, can you find it? And you need that buddy and other people to help you find it. There's things now that I can't find, or that I need, that I know who, you have to eventually know who to go to get something done. And so that's kind of part of the puzzle and the fun in those first 90 days is, yes, you're getting your work done. There's probably some mandatory things you need to learn for your company. So we have a whole bunch of compliance stuff that you must go through. So it's getting you through that first month is probably the toughest, in terms of like you're eating from a fire hose of information, of stuff that you possibly don't think you'll ever use. And then it's kind of like going to college all over. And then things even out in that next 30 days. And in that last of the 90, that first quarter, you should really be ready, set to go and execute on what your actual goals are. But not every manager is created equal. So sometimes you need more than the tools that we've given you. So you can rely on the ERGs, you can rely on HR BPs and other people, which are HR business partners, to help you kind of navigate what else you might need. So I always encourage people to join an employee resource group when you get to a new company, if they have them, or something similar that can help make a company even as large as Richard's and as small as mine, a little bit smaller, and really help you be successful and be noticed. So
that's actually great. So I think it's not just, you both have, I'll call it the mentorship or the buddy programs to get me started, which is great. But what I hear is you go beyond that. So it's not like I'm joining this team. Yes, I have a job. Yes. My manager is going to tell me what he wants from me. Yes. But I'm actually going to wind up in I'll call it a buddy program, to learn more how to be effective in this company, which is not just the assignment that I have, but it's more about let me help you understand what works, what doesn't work, kind of a thing. The other thing I think, and I'm thinking both of your companies probably do it, is that I see now things that are not always what I call work task related. They're not task oriented meetings. So I'm familiar with going to a team for a scrum meeting or whatever it's going to be. But in many cases, a lot of these companies now are saying, wait a second, we want to, in a sense, have people think in a broader context. So as you both said, we have these tremendous resources, not just on your team, but outside the team. And so we, in a sense, have to have an ongoing effort to try to continually educate people about those resources. And I had my own stupid thought when I worked for IBM as many thousands of years ago. In the old IBM, they had over 300,000 people. They were a big company. And when I got a chance to move around and see different divisions of IBM, I found out they were doing the same thing over and over again for no good reason. And I thought the only job I really wanted at that point was to write a job description to the chairman that says, hey, my only job is to travel around IBM and figure out what's redundant and then let you know, have lunch with you once a month and say, hey, look, we're being redundant. We should reuse this work over and over instead of repeating it. And there's an efficiency opportunity, but there's also a benefit for everybody personally to have a better understanding of what those resources are within a company for sure. And certainly that even applies to clients when you're looking at Accenture as well. Drew, your thoughts?
I think it's different. For permanent work, I don't like to ever overstep as far as the type of communication, because I'm used to the consulting side of things where what I used to do, I mean, before COVID, would sit down with someone and their manager and go over just the things that sometimes aren't brought up that are basic. Like if you're not available, who can they report to? For time cards, things that we do, if you can't approve it, who can they go to? Who can we consult with? What time do they need to be here? What time do they need to be signed on? If they're ever going to be running late, what is just a lot of things that I feel like are unsaid sometimes. And especially right now with COVID, where a lot of remote work is becoming even more prevalent than it ever was before and will continue to be that way. A communication plan has to be put in place. You can't leave things up for interpretation because that's when they go awry. In the first 90 days, like that's the make or break. Like you're going to find out if you want to be there or if you want to employ these people. And you need to give yourself a good chance to really figure it out if this makes sense from a rapport standpoint. Do they follow? Do they take direction well standpoint? And just if this meshes well with what your short and long-term desire is for that role. Like you really have to set up a good communication plan. And I'm always willing to help just because sometimes people don't have that as part of the process. It seems like for the people that just spoke, I mean, they clearly do, and that's great, but not everyone does. So you have to address those what seem like basic things day one or day two, just to make sure it's addressed. And then I always try to add certain time invites to the manager and the candidate's calendar just to follow up with them, check in. I try to have a relationship on both sides so they feel like they can confide in you too, especially for contract work where sometimes maybe it's a hard to find skill set, but this person isn't the right fit. If we feel like we're in the know and we want to help address these things as it's going on, people will adjust. They'll realize like, listen, we want to make it work with one another. It's much harder to fire someone or leave and find something new than it is to address the elephants in the room sometime about what isn't working or what should be addressed or hasn't been to that point. And I feel like just basic communication alleviates some of that awkwardness sometimes, or just having to let someone go. So it's basic, but that's one of the things that I've always tried to be true to make sure that everyone's communicating, even if they're not, or if they don't want to. Like you have to be able to have those conversations sometimes. So
yeah, I think it's a great thing as a recruiter to say that I want to continue to have the touch points with both the hiring manager, the team, and the person I brought onto the team, in effect, to make sure that at least for this minimal entry time, but for the first 3 months, that those kind of potential issues are being identified and ironed out. And to your point, it's a lot easier for Richard to talk to me to, in a sense, if I'm a new guy on his team, to figure out, in a sense, what I need to change. And your understanding of that can contribute. The biggest thing is that, as you point out, you can listen to Richard and Jody talk, and it's the same with a lot of other companies. To try to fill jobs is not cheap. It takes a lot of time, a lot of money. It's an expensive thing. And if you've hired poorly and you, in a sense, can't, get, I'll call it the right fit, if you can't work on that together and build the right fit, it's an expensive thing to have to restart to refill those positions for sure. That's, I'll call it the worst case scenario, is that you can't move forward with that. So great perspective. So that's it on the set questions we have. John, I'm going to pick on John Carpenter, who has been kind enough to look at the chat. And John, I want to ask you, are there questions? We've covered a lot of ground with the three experts on the panel tonight. Do you have some specific things that are big issues that we haven't talked about that you can see?
Real quick, Jim,
Go ahead,
before
Bobby.
Hold on, John.
John
Sorry.
gets,
Bobby. Yeah, go ahead,
before
Bobby.
John gets to the Q&A, I just want to point out a resource for everybody. This is the Learning Materials Working Group wiki page, which is open to the public. Why I'm pointing it out is that we have bi-weekly meetings, and John and I are the chairs of the group, where if you come to the meeting, we will introduce you to the community of Hyperledger. We will get you pointed in the right direction for resources, and we will show you things. Our homepage has information on the Giving Chain project. It has great resources. Here's that landscape tool I had showed you earlier. Here's a new resource for presentations that the special interest groups have done. So if you're interested in our special interest groups, you can see what they are by clicking that group button down. Usually it works. Maybe because I'm on Zoom, it's not working, but it'll list all the special interest groups. Click on their homepage, read about what they're doing. Please voyeur this website. We want you to look, we want you to read, we want you to take. Our meeting information is right on the front. Here are a library of resources from all the projects, use cases, key terms. We list the meetups that are happening during the week, current affairs, great new projects that are coming out. We give you links to test them. You can play with mini fabric. There's a whole resource. But one of the things at the bottom of this page always are those links to those education programs everybody was asking about in the chat. So if you want to take a beginner class, again, all of these classes are offered through the Linux Foundation and edX. If you want to get a certification in these classes, all you have to do is pay for the exam. So all the classes are free. Nothing is stopping you from getting this education. And again, Consensus Academy offers the same thing, because we like to say at Hyperledger, we're peanut butter and Consensus is the jelly. So go learn about Besu, learn about our connectors. We're working very closely with them. Here's links to their educational programs. So again, please take down, it's wiki.hyperledger.org, and just drop down these projects, click on any of the projects. My groups isn't working. It's not working, but I'll turn it over to John for the Q&A.
Oh, wait a minute. Before you jump over there, since you talked about the Learning Materials Working Group, what I'd like you to do is at least drop the URL for the group into the chat for us.
Did that already.
Oh, you did?
I'll do it again.
All right, do it again. It doesn't hurt to repeat good things. And I'll say the same thing. I was lucky tonight because I've had three great panelists that all brought different perspectives. So I really can't thank each of you, Richard, Jody, and Drew, for what you've added to our discussion tonight. It's been honestly a very different, very wonderful, I'll call it discussion panel, because of what you each brought to the table that I haven't had before. So that said, if you guys want to drop links in too, what's going to happen, this thing is being live streamed on YouTube, and we're going to wind up with, you can go out to YouTube, you'll be able to get the, we're going to post the link to the YouTube site as well on the Hyperledger Stuff and BC Employee, so you can go see the video. But there are also the chat that we're doing as well. If you've asked questions in the chat, if you're looking at these links, that'll be in the chat as well. So in a sense, everybody who's attended will easily be able to, I'll call it, follow up and get the information from this as well. So with that said, John, let me turn it over to you and see if we've got a couple of key questions that haven't been answered that we want to close out on.
Yeah, so I've been going through and really dealing with all the different questions that have come through the chat, and I'm amazed at just the good volume of questions and engagement we've been getting in the chat. So I think some of the key takeaways that I've seen is basically, one is a lot of reskilling. So basically, if we're looking at, people that are coming into the blockchain space, they may have not had, experience as a developer, or they may have had, other experience that's unrelated to blockchain. And how do they really engage and start to work with a company that's hiring knowing that they want to, they're excited about and want to get engaged with blockchain. I think that's one of the first key questions. And maybe I'll just throw it out to the three panelists and see what are your thoughts around that.
Yeah, anybody want to respond to John's?
I take that. I think you have to realize you can't go back and change your career. You're not going to be able to add years of experience that other people have, but you got to start from the beginning, whether it be some of the certifications and the classwork that you can do that Bobby had just brought up, or one of the other courses that you can find online that give you this opportunity to not only add this to your skill set and your LinkedIn page and your resume, but also learn about this. Richard was bringing up, like, you want to be able to speak to this stuff, do the homework. You have to. If you're going to really just take the stand and show someone that one day you had an epiphany and you really wanted to make a transition in your career, like, you got to show them that you're really passionate about it. Like, as long as you can add certain things, whether it be education, meetup groups, different things you've read, interests, like, those are all things that people look for, whether it be your personal profile, your resume, or even on social media. Show people that there's interest there and why they should take your call. And at that point, it's all on you to prove to them that, like, you'd make a difference if you joined.
Yeah,
Drew
thanks.
is, I was going to say, he's really right on target. At least, if you're making a career shift, most of the open roles that we have are at the lower end of our house. So we're looking for, we have probably 1 to 3 years of experience roles are the majority. Our associates, our analysts, those roles are not requiring you to know everything. And we would actually prefer you not, because then what you've learned, you kind of can't unlearn, right? So there's other things, there's going to be some basics that you need to know, but you can be young and starting out and still only 1 to 3 years of experience in this space. You can also be making a career shift or a sector shift and having work experience and being in a work environment now that we are mostly remote, although going back to hybrid will be also of value because they know that you know how to work, right? And then this is something new. We will continue. Any company who wants, they know that you're going to have to continuously train you. So don't also be over certified. Like, you want some certifications, but don't go crazy with those either. That's just like applying to 20 jobs is having 20 certifications that you may or may not use. So choose the ones that are really going to serve you well and get you the furthest.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I would add.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
I was going to say, I would add, embrace your experience. And so when I first joined Accenture, I was looking across at my fridge and trying to figure out how to order milk and pay for it. And the economics of things like debit cards just aren't really sought for those types of micro payments. And so I started looking at Bitcoin, and I decided, this was back in very late 2014, I would read everything I possibly could for a week on Bitcoin. And I realized halfway through the week that Bitcoin wasn't the innovation, it was blockchain. And fundamentally, we had a completely different way to manage data across different parties. When I made that epiphany, I saw the use cases everywhere and literally said to my practice lead, we're starting a blockchain practice today because it's going to change the world. So embrace your experience, because if I didn't understand payments, I wouldn't have had that epiphany that day.
Yeah, you're right. You bring your experience and look at the new opportunity and take it together and see what you come up with creatively. Jody and Richard, you both made the point earlier too, that like you said, Jody, you don't want to be worried about becoming the best Python programmer that ever existed. That's not the key. You said that and you're right. But the thing that's interesting is not only do you carry in your experience, not only do you carry in whatever homework you've done, I'll call it on the new technology, to say, yes, I can more than spell blockchain. At least I did some research on it. But more than that, the other side of the coin is also, you both mentioned, show some interest in a sense what the company is about, what they're trying to do, what, in a sense, things they're focused on. Even if you're not going to wind up on the team that you're talking about, at least they'll realize that you did the homework and did the research to say, hey, I didn't just read the job description off of DTCC. I actually tried to understand what they're doing and see what the business is about as well. And as Richard said, if you marry the two, you're probably going to come up with some creative ideas to put on the table, at least, that'll make sense in an interview process, if nothing else. So, John, anything else that you saw?
I think the other thing that I thought was interesting is, we talked a lot about great opportunities with all the companies for internships. And so I know, that's active recruitment at the university level. But then I had quite a number of people that said, well, I'm an older job applicant, but I'm still interested in an internship. So maybe the group could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I can speak to, I know, well, it's focused on women, but at the relaunch and Society of Women Engineers, now both have about a 10% male population. It is for those who've had a break in their career for whatever reason. So you can be early, but it is to also catapult you back into the workforce. We have a non-technical track, which I guess no one here would be interested in. And then we have a technical track. For the non-technical, it's 12 weeks that you get ongoing coaching along, but you are hired, but within those 12 weeks, we and you would decide whether or not you want to stay. So it's a bless and release. So you might not like DTCC, although you just got all this training for 12 weeks and decide you don't want to stay. And we can also decide the same thing. But during that, you are actually taking on a role to really work at our place. And the advantage of being older or more seasoned is the fact that you've had some work experience versus a student who has, lots of great skills and talents too, but has not put it all into effort in the same vein. So we do have programs like that, and we're not age discriminatory. So you can still apply for a role as an older, more seasoned professional for something that might not be at the level that you are now in what you do to make that shift to tech. So that's the only opportunity in terms of this. We have a few other programs with Year Up and some others. So definitely take a look at our website. There's quite a few programs and ways to enter as a more seasoned professional, as a fellow or intern, if you want to call it that.
That's great, Jody. So now I can tell everybody honestly, no, I'm not 22. I'm not that young kid starting out as an intern. I can admit I'm a few years older than that. Now that I know that there's a possibility for older people in the workplace as well. And it's nice to hear that there are different many paths to get in there as well.
We're seasoned, Jim.
That's right. We're super seasoned, right? In my case, to the point that it's almost spicy. So
yeah, the other thing I'll just bring up that I think was a constant in the chat was around what is the best way to really get your networking done in today's environment to engage with the blockchain space. So maybe we can talk just a little bit about networking and avenues and channels that you think would be helpful.
I've seen a ton of invites come to my LinkedIn just in the short time that I've been speaking here. Like, connect with each other. Help each other, connect with one another. Exactly. Every time you connect to someone, like, you're opening up your network to be able to do what just the example I'd given before. Hey, I'm applying to this job here. This person, we know one another. Is there any way we can set up a few minutes to talk to each other? Those are the things that stand out. You don't want to badger someone. And it's kind of like the same example that Jody was given about don't over certify yourself, don't overdo it to try and get in front of them. But what's your elevator pitch? Like, hey, here's a LinkedIn message. There's a reason it's 200 characters when you connect with someone. This is what we share in common. This is why I want to connect with you. Like, help yourself. It's a numbers game from a networking perspective. Don't overdo it, but be ready when you get that chance and you see that you applied to something or you're trying to work in a space that you've never done before. If you have a connection, utilize that. That's what this market is nowadays. It's different than it was even 5 years ago.
I think also the fact that, both with COVID and because of the fact that we're talking about technology, more and more of this is online. And so the ability to actually, join a group for 15, 20 minutes in between a couple of calls that you have, it's far easier than it was, 2-3 years ago, even, where you had to drive somewhere or you had to be at a conference, for instance. There was just a bigger investment in time and resources to be there. So I think it's easier to do that networking in this environment, and then follow it up with the LinkedIn invite that's personalized.
Yeah, great point. There are many more ways to connect now, and it's a lot easier, especially with the newer technologies that have matured, than it was in the past. It used to be, as you say, get in a car and go somewhere, and that even gets back into the whole, I'll call it, pandemic impact on the rethinking the way we work together now. All of a sudden, everybody goes, wait a minute, we got to find better ways to connect faster. And we can't be going back to what I call the old travel models as much. There's still reason to do that. As Jody said, the hybrid model is coming back, but it's not the same model that we had before. It's at best a hybrid model in many cases at this point, for sure. So anything else, John, that jumps out, or have we hit the main topics that you saw?
Yeah,
so far?
the panel did a wonderful job of addressing all the things that were in the chat, just in the normal panel discussion. And I think there's really a lot of appreciation from the attendees for sharing the links. And also, as you talked about, being able to get in contact with you via LinkedIn, or I know that Richard, you shared Cynthia's information for connecting with Accenture there. So that's all perfect stuff. And Jody, thanks for sharing all your great links too, because those were super helpful to the group. And I think we've really pretty much covered it, Jim. Those were kind of just a few questions that weren't covered.
All right. Well, again, I can't thank the panel enough. Richard, Jody, Drew, you guys are fantastic. Obviously, the audience has really appreciated it tonight. Any last comment, Richard, on your end?
We just really appreciate all the great questions in the discussion. Please check out accenture.com/blockchain. Reach out to our dedicated recruiter in this space, Cynthia, and looking forward to hearing from you all.
Great. Thanks so much. Jody, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think you guys are all clearly doing some networking by being here. Curiosity is being, I guess, answered. You've come to some of the right places. Definitely, we do not have specific blockchain roles. I will say that, completely transparently, but a lot of our roles still feed into the same stuff and the skills are the same. So we might be the place for you to start and maybe to go directly into blockchain elsewhere. But it is something that we do deal with, but it is not the breadth of our work. So we, protect the money with cyber, AI, and other things that are in the same space. So when you go to our website, if you put in blockchain, you're not going to find a role there. But if you need some navigation, plenty of people will help. So looking forward to anyone who's coming our way. And if it's not you and you're the elder and you have younger folks, we do have great internships. We're in the middle of our, season now recruiting. We hope to give everyone a holiday gift and know by the end of this year where they will be in May. So, get those in sooner than later. And like I said, the 300 roles that we have open, love to fill them. So.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Jody. Drew, any closing thoughts other than the fact that you got too many links now?
Send more, please. Like I was never going to be a physician or a doctor or anything. Like I can't help people in that capacity, but I love helping people find a job. It's a very big part of your life. So if I can help you, if you're connected with someone that I am, and you see that we have that mutual connection, let me know. I'll try and help you where I can. And I'll see if we can find something for you between our company or anywhere else. Like there's a lot of job out there. There's a lot of opportunity. I would prefer this market any day of the week to any different kind. It's piping hot and it's easy for me to grab the attention of a manager, even for someone who's transitioning into a new line of work. I just placed 3 college grads in the last 24 hours who are going to be doing some work that's going to add to their resume, build up their repertoire, things that we were talking about, build your skill set. Think about it as, why would someone want to respond or why would someone want to hire you? Help yourself. So help yourself, send me a connection. I added my LinkedIn public profile before, and I really enjoyed this conversation. Panelists were great. I think I was in great company, and no, I would join this any other time you asked me to. So thank you, Jim.
Great. Well, thank you again to the panelists. I want to thank everybody who attended tonight. I saw that there was a high level of engagement, and hopefully you found it valuable both in the presentation and that it's going to help you afterward as well. Obviously, this is going to be out on YouTube. We'll have a transcript out there as well. And then we already have, you'll get to look at the transcript, see all the links that Bobby already had given you before about different ways to get started, both on education, experience, in the giving chain and other volunteer projects if you're not already working in the space. So once again, I want to thank everybody. It's been a great, great session tonight, and wish you all the best of luck. And, we have 2 other series on the program coming up as well, session 3 and session 4 to follow this. So encourage you to come back for both of those. Bobby, any closing thoughts on your end?
Just thank you very much, Jim. You did an awesome job. And I look forward to the next meetup for this is more marketing yourself, how to, again, put your best foot forward.
Great. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone tonight. It's been a great time. Really enjoyed it, and wish everybody the best of luck. So thank you, and look forward to seeing you in the next session.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
everyone.
Guys.
Good night.
Have a great one.
Thank you.